Salam alaikum alaikum salam estata matamba. Today I'm doing a video on Nsambi Mpungu, or also known as Kalunga, and it has other names within the Congo, but I can't elaborate them because it's due to initiation rites. This video has been requested by many people, and I'm gonna do my best to elaborate on this topic. I'm gonna give my perspective, right? My perspective on this topic. Before we start, we have to shift our perspective. We have to understand things from a different point of view, especially if we have been raised, right, indoctrinated within a Western society. Right? We might see things in a certain way because of other religions like Christianity, Catholicism, Muslim, or whatever any other religion that you were indoctrinated in. You're going to see the world or reality with a certain lens. And to truly understand, right, and grab the concept of Nsambi Mpungu, or also known as Kalunga, we have to let go of the doctrine. We have to take off those glasses, right? Those lens from a Western society or perspective and put on the bakongos, right? In that sense. So once we can do that, then we can truly grasp, the concept of Nsambi Mpungu in that sense. And we'll go ahead and begin with what is Nsambi Mpungu, also known as Kalunga. Nsambi Mpungu, or Kalunga, right? There's a saying, right, within Bakongo or Kikongo that it says, Nsambi Mpungu walungila mu baboye biabo. And I translated it there on number 1, right? It says only Nsambi Mpungu exist because everything in the visible and invisible universe are only the different manifestations of Nsambi Mpungu, also known as Kalunga. There is no such thing as good and bad, and these are the only two things that you need to grasp, right, from Nsambi Mpungu. In another video, I said that Nsambi Mpungu, right, is something, all right, that you cannot grasp truly, right? You cannot fully understand it because it's so vast, it's everywhere, it's infinite. It has no shape, no form, no sex. It's not a he, it's not a she. It's the cause of it all, right? And it's neither good nor bad. It is good and it is bad. And we'll get into that. Nsambi Mpungu, Kalunga, is good and bad. It's beautiful and ugly. It's violent and compassionate. Intelligence and ignorance. It's black and white. It's oil and salt. It's up and down. It's right and left. It's male and female. You see, it's yin and yang. It's the yin and yang of things. So with this concept, right, we have to understand that in Nsambi Mpungu, it's a primordial energy, right? It's omniscient, right? Omnipotent, omnipresent. And omniscient means having infinite awareness, knowing it all, understanding it all, having complete insight of it all. Omnipotent means having, how can I put this, an unlimited power, right? Omnipresent means being everywhere or present at the same time. And, with these three words, right? We can draw the picture or the idea that I'm trying to transmit about Nsambi Mpungu, also known as Kalunga. And there's pictures, that I have for you guys to truly grasp, because there's no such thing as good and bad, the devil, or any of those things for the Bakongo, and even within Palo. And I'll get all into that in a second. Nsambi Mpungu, right, also known as Kalunga, it is the creation and it is the destruction, right? Within its kinenga, its equilibrium, its balance. It is the life, right? And the moyo and kufwa, right? The life and death within its process of its kinenga. Everything that you see, from the smallest things within the quantum realm to the biggest things within the universe, within the visible, the invisible, it's Nsambi Mpungu, right? The positive things that you see from your perspective to the negative things you see within your perspective, and all the processes that it has. And I'm going to go ahead and pull up now a magnet, right? Because a magnet is the best thing that we can describe in Nsambi Mpungu, because it has two polarities, right? Two poles, a positive and a negative. But at the same time, there's a neutral point, right? It's kinenga. And even if you cut the magnet, right, within its positive state, it's always going to have its negative side. Right there, you see it within the picture. And even if you cut the negative side, right, you're still going to have the other side also, the positive and negative. And these are ways that you can observe nature and the way things work, and truly understand the concept of what Nsambi Mpungu or Kalunga truly is. It's everything. Everything we see, all the forces, the source of it all. The only word that exists within the English language is God. Some people have God in a certain way. They define God in a certain way, and that's perfectly fine. Now, the way Palo and within the roots, if we go to the Bakongo, this is the way that they define it. It's everything, it's everywhere, and it knows it all. It's not a he, it's not a she, it's a it. It's the force, or the total energy in that sense. And it's not good nor bad. It is good and it is bad. It's the process to create, but also to destruct for change in that sense. It is health and it is sickness. You see, these processes exist within us, within our bodies, such as the cells within our bodies at this very moment. They're regenerating, but at the same time, they're dying off, right? They're degenerating. And if that process speeds up of degenerating, you'll get old and you'll pass away. If it stays steady, you'll regenerate faster than what they're degenerating, and you'll be young and you'll be full of life. The process of Kinenga is very, very important. I did a video about Kinenga. You guys should look it up. It's very, very extremely important in that sense. Kinenga is the balance, the equilibrium, and that's what we, as in Kisi Malongo, specialists of the medicine of nature, right? That's what we do, right? We either hinder the process or we speed it up. We stop the process of something negative or something positive. It doesn't matter, for whatever aspect it is, for a certain cause in that sense. But sooner or later, everything continues, right? Musoba, everything changes at the end of the day. But we can slow it down or speed it up. For health, for love, for money, for any aspect in life. Everything, the ants, the birds, the trees, our life, the sun, the solar system, everything. And here's a picture, right, of a lion, right, hunting a gazelle. And there's no such thing as good and bad. This is just a simple observation in nature. If you're a gazelle, right, you're saying, oh, this is bad situation for me, right? If you're the lion, you're saying this is a great situation for me in that sense. And if you're neither, you're just observing the issue, right? Or the scenario, not an issue, but the scenario. And if you truly see things, you just see that that is life. The causes and effect, the lion is eating the gazelle and is maintaining its food chain. It's having an effect within the food chain. If the gazelle gets away, it still affects the kinenga of the food chain. And it affects me and it affects everything else. The plants, the trees, everything else. In that sense. So there's no such thing as good and bad or within God, within this perspective, within the Palo or in Kisi, Malongo, within the Bakongo, in any of that sense. We're going to get into more later within Lukankasi and all these other stronger forces. I tend not to use the word negative, right? I know I used for one of my videos negative medicine. And what I should have truly put down was stronger medicine in this sense, because it's stronger. It affects the kinenga in a stronger way. It causes radical change fast for a positive view or a negative view in the sense, because and we'll get all into that stuff. So let me go ahead and get into what's the difference between Bisi and Kisi, or also known as Mpungu or Mpungo, and Bakulu. And I know within the Afro-Cuban structure, we use these certain words. They mean certain things within Cuba, but they also mean things within the Bakongo. Maybe the lost of culture and information due to the transatlantic slave trade, mixed up these words. And it's perfectly fine because when I speak to other tatas who are Afro-Cuban, I truly understand what they mean by Mpungo. And sometimes I use the word more like the Afro-Cuban in that sense. But in this video, I'm gonna do my best to give my perspective and the knowledge that I have from reading multiple anthropologist books, the teachings from my godfather, the knowledge that I have obtained over time, and many anthropologist books, great anthropologists, and one, Barbaro Martinez is one that he's amazing. You guys should look up his books in that sense. And there's so many. John and Betty, there's so many anthropologists within the Bakung and so much rich history in that sense. So let's go ahead and get into the Bisi spirits. And before we start, I want to go ahead and differentiate. Bisi is plural for Simbi, right? So Bisi it represents all the spirits in that sense. Now, Nsambi is just a spirit. So a Nsambi spirit is a manifestation of Nsambi Mpungu, also known as Kalunga. See, the manifestation of it. A Nsambi spirit represents the energy of everything. For example, a body, a family, a clan, a town, a county, a state, a country, a continent, a planet, a rock, a tree, a forest, etc., etc., etc. It's in every aspect of life and its environment. So it comes to be the manifestation, right, of the source of Nsambi Mpungu or Kalunga in that sense. And let's say here, note, Simbi is not a deity, right? It's a living force which everything operates within it, right? Holding power of the source. Now, a Nsambi spirit is the manifestation of Simbi in that sense, because Nsambi, you see these words almost sound the same and somewhat mean the same in that sense. And I'll go ahead also, explain something, at least from my perspective, within Nsambi Mpungu and Kalunga. Nsambi Mpungu is the cause, the source. Kalunga comes to be the effect, the manifestation and the process, and the process of dingo dingo, right? The cycles of everything, the expansion, the explosion of it all, right? Of the universe, within the visible and invisible realm, right? The operation or the program of it all in that sense. And there are many types of Simbi spirits. I can give you guys some examples like Simbi Mamba or Masa, which is a spirit of water. Simbi Nkondia or Kufwa, right? A spirit who serves death. Simbi Mbamba, which is a spirit that it lives in shells. Simbi Makaya, which is a spirit of the forest. Simbi Mutwala, a warrior spirit. Simbi Nkondi, a spirit that hunts. All these Simbis or Simbi spirits or Bisimbis are spirits, right, that are within everything, right? And it holds up everything in that sense. And it operates, right? You can kind of see in the sense of the program. And obviously there are spirits or Simbis or functions, right, that are on both sides within that magnet, right? Within Nsambi Mpungu or Kalunga, within that process. There's some that hinder it and some that enhances it, right? Some that give life and some that take away, some that create, some that destroy. So, and it's just a simple process at the end of the day. From whatever perspective we see it, from morals, codes, and convictions, is what we say is negative and positive, with whatever effects are happening within our life in that sense. So now we're going to go ahead and get into what's an Nkisi, Mpungu, and Bakulu. Nkisi means medicine or holy medicine, a substance, a chemical. In other words, it's a spirit. It represents many Bisimbis in that sense. But more importantly, it's encapsulated within a container, right? A futu, a parcel, right? In that sense. So that's when what's an Nkisi, where it has a certain purpose. It has been put or wrapped or put in a container for a purpose in that sense. Now, Mpungu means literally almighty, the embodiment in a multiple form of all forces and vital power. That's why we say Nsambi Mpungu, because it's the embodiment, right, of all the forces and its vital power in one. Nsambi Mpungu. But within Cuba, we use Mpungu for its force, and that's perfectly fine. I use Mpungu sometimes in that sense. Now, Bakulu means ancestor or an ancestral spirit within our line, right? Like your grandfathers, or even within the community, right? Because at the end of the day, we're all ancestors for a certain community or a tribe. We're all a family. We're all connected in that sense, which in Cuba, we use the word Nfumbi or Nfumbe. Many houses use the word Nfumbi when that spirit or ancestor from the community is not encapsulated. It's an Ndundu, right? It's a ghost running around, or, is lurking, or it's barando. They say it's barando, está barando. It's still stuck within the physical realm, and it's just there, right? And then we use the word Mfumbe when that ancestor from the community is encapsulated and is put inside of the partial, whatever parcel it is, right? It can be in a wooden statue like a kini kini or in kisinkondi in that sense. It can be in a sack, which we say boomba, but and boomba means something. Boomba means something, and boomba is something else, and it's more within depth. It can be within, a iron pot or a clay pot, or it can be in an encuyo or a type of rock, or it can be inside of an empaca, it can be inside of makuto, it can be in so many different ways, shapes, or form. But at the end of the day, now that we're speaking about Cuba, we'll go ahead and get into that, because I spoke about this in one of the earlier videos when I was giving advice. If you haven't watched that one, I recommend you to watch it, but I'll go ahead and elaborate something about what I said in that video, and we'll go ahead and get into the structure of Cuba, right? The Afro-Cuban Palo structure using in Kisi or in Mpungu. Many houses, and even I sometimes use the word Mpungu, right, to refer to the forces of nature. And the Nkisi or Mpungu, right, it's a Bisimbi, right? They're Bisimbis, or spirits within nature, within everything, right? And we encapsulate it, right? We trap that force of nature and we introduce it to our ancestors, to an ancestor, to an Mfumbe, for a certain purpose. We specialize in. That's why I personally think we use the word Nganga, which means specialist or master, because that Mfumbe now is a master of a certain force. In that sense, even though there's other forces that are introduced in there, but he has a certain force that is strong. And I can't go so much in depth with these things, because it's for initiated people only in that sense. But there's a certain structure, right, that in Cuba, right, it was structured like this, right, like Lucero, Siete Rayos, Sarabanda, Cobayende, Centella, Kalunga, Cholawenge, Mamakenge, Gurufinda. But I said in other videos, these are just names to give a certain force of nature in a certain position, right, within the pantheon or of the Bisi spirits in that sense. Is to specialize that in Fumbe, right? The name, like Lucero, there's other names. There's other names for Cobayende, like Patayaga. There's other names, Luleno, Tatafunde, you see, and it represents the same force, but the monta, or the construction, was built a little bit different. It has the same force, but a different power to it. Centella has marihuana. I see different names in that sense. Kalunga, right? Madre Agua, and it's looked at as a little bit different. And within Cuba, they gave these forces, right, or this structure, certain characteristics that it kind of, some houses practice it like that. Many houses, actually. I tend not to practice it like that because I practice a little bit more of the Bakongo, more Tiempo Andilanga, how they say, a little bit more antique. But I understand, or I have the knowledge. You have to differentiate the differences between having the knowledge and understanding something and then practicing it. The same way I study La Ocha, I study Ifa into the things that I can know, right, within their traditions, but I don't practice it at all, right, because it's within the Cuban cultures, within the culture of these practices. I study other traditions, other things, but that doesn't mean that I practice them. The same way, right, I know Lucero and the certain tratados, certain things that they say about Lucero, certain tratados they say about Siete Rayos and Sasi, certain things they say about Sarabanda, and et cetera, in that sense. But at the end of the day, it's a structure that was built in Cuba, right? The structure and the way things are, you can't read this most of the time in anthropology or this or that. You have to be within a household. If you want to practice Palo, but more in an antique way, you can read the history and change the practice a little bit, but it needs to stay within its structure. It has a structure, right? Tratados, agreements. And that's why I'm going to say the insinga dikanda, right? El gajo, the umbilical cord or the biogenetic rope of the community, right? Of your Nkisi that got from your godfather's Nkisi that came from his godfather Nkisi that came from his godfather Nkisi that came from his godfather, etc., etc., etc. You see all that accumulated knowledge and structures being passed down from person to person, the same way your tatandi passes it down to your godfather, and your godfather passes it down to you, and you're gonna pass it down to your godchildren. In that sense, so it's very important. Godparents, extremely important. They're the ones who will set you up for success or for failure at the end of the day. So you have to choose them wisely. If you can choose them wisely in that sense. And there's many, many, many great paleros out here that I have come across and I have spoken to in that sense. So you just got to take your time within that sense. I know many people want me to elaborate within Lucero, within Siete Rayos, Sarabanda, Cobainda, but those are treaties and those are certain secrets and stuff that, I don't like to get into, because some houses practice it like that, others houses don't, and I don't want to go so much in depth, and I don't like to go so much in depth with those things like that. I really don't, start preaching what I'm practicing and this and that. I'm just giving information to orientate you, right, for you guys to get a better understanding of what this practice is. This is, I just had a conversation, right? This is not a faith in that sense. This is not a religion. It's a practice. Just like you go out and, a lawyer does his practice, a doctor does his practice, a nurse does his practice, a carpenter do their practice, and it has a process and it has a cause and effect. This is the same way. You do this and it is for a cause and it's going to have its effect. So it's very serious. So you had to take these things serious, very serious. Now that I got that out the way, we're going to go ahead and get into something, right? Now we're going to talk about Lukankasi and Kandiempebe, ¿verdad? What they call the devil in our many houses. And I understand that they call it that because it's a force, right? That is not negative, right? It's not negative, it's not bad in the sense when you know what you're doing, right? It's just a stronger force, right? The same way as any of these Nkisis, right? Or prendas or mpungus, if you want to say it the Afro-Cuban way, right? The same way that they exist, or the montas, right? The construction of those ancestral forces are created is the same way within Nkandiempeba and Lukankasi. There's different way of practicing these things. You can go out to nature and manipulate them or do agreements with them, and there's sometimes that you can encapsulate them. But I can't get into all these things, right? But Lukankasi or Nkandiempeba comes to be a stronger force, right? A stronger force that causes change, right? We use these stronger forces. They're not negative, but they're stronger forces. I can use Lukankasi or Kandiempebe in the sense to stop, right? Or use as defense when, somebody's being under attack. I can use it for protection in that sense, or defense. I can use it for offense in the sense to stop a certain process really fast. In that sense, it's kind of like a nuclear bomb compared to, man-man combat. It's something fast, something radical. And other forces, that's just one. There's many other forces like that. The same as Centella, Kalunga, Kurufinda, all of these forces, right, or Nkisis, can be charged up or manipulated in a stronger way. Obviously, the person who's going to deal with that is going to be in a negative way, because they're messing with its kinenga at the end of the day. And I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a little bit of an example, right? It's neither good nor bad, right? And I'm going to go back to a lion and a gazelle, right? The lion and the gazelle is neither good nor bad at the end of the day. But let's say if the lion wants to eat, right? If the lion wants to eat an elephant, right? What do you think is going to happen to the lion? The elephant is going to overpower the lion because it's much bigger, right? And we can represent this, right, or take it to life from the simple observation of looking at nature, that the elephant can be an enormous problem, right? Enormous issue, or a very deadly disease. And the lion is the person who's trying to overcome that disease or that issue in their life. But the problem is too big. So it needs, a little help in that sense. So within nature, there's something that exists, right? A symbiotic relationship in all its aspects. We give and we take. We give and we take, the symbiotic relationships. And if the lion, right, has a friend that is much smaller than him, like an ant, and the lion tells the ant, hey, your enemy is my enemy, and there's the saying that your problem and it's the same as mine. We both have the same problem at the end of the day. Let's work together, overcome it. The elephant is, eating the leaves from the tree that the ant needs. So they both want the lion gone, right? They both want the problem gone. One, the spirits can represent the ant, right? The lion can represent the person, and the elephant represents the sickness, in that sense. Obviously, the spirit wants to maintain a certain kinenga or balance for its community. The person, who is the lion, doesn't want to pass away or doesn't want to go through that process at this time. So they get into a symbiotic relationship, and the rituals are done and the agreements are done. And the ant goes out to have its effect towards the elephant. And here it goes. Now the ants have went to attack the elephant and have infected its trunk and cause a disease within the elephant, which causes the elephant to pass away. And now the lion can eat the elephant. So this is a symbiotic relationship. This is the causes and effect for change. Is it good nor bad? Or in that sense, it all depends on the perspective. And this is just a scenario for you guys to truly comprehend that positive and negative is just a perspective. There's no such thing as good and bad within Palo, within Nkisi Malongo, or the medicine in itself, or even within life. Good and bad is defined by our morals, codes, convictions, our doctrine. And that's what Insinga Dikanda carries, right? And that's one of the codes. Whatever is good for the community is good in itself. Always remember that what is good for the community is good in itself. What is bad for the community is bad within itself. In that sense. And, hopefully you guys have grasped the concept of Nsambi Mpungu and the Nkisis. And I tried my best, to try to explain this without going so much in depth, because there's still a lot more to Nsambi Mpungu, the Nkisis, the Bisimbis, the Bakulu, the ancestors, all of these things. I'm going to leave you guys with Nsinga Tikana Ninga Katu Bukako. Always uphold the community. Always make the right decisions for the community. Like, share, subscribe, leave a comment if you have any questions. Thank you guys for your time. And salam alaikum. Malaikum salam.